didn't want to wake up from that dream, and he wanted to stay in that state, but he was told that no, it's time for you to go back. I think we kind of went through all the way to here. And then Rumi took a couple of so in here what he's been trying to establish the fact that first of all, again, your connection is always through the soul, and it's your soul which gets connected to the Almighty and to the consciousness, the grand consciousness of this world. And at that time, when you're connected, most of what you perceive are needs are, not most of them, all of them are taken care of and more. And he also wanted to establish that everything around us has a consciousness and solely, understands it understands the commands of the God Almighty, in a sense, as Rumi brought a very quick passage or story of Abu Jahl and the prophet, that the prophet told them that as Abu Jahl was asking him, tell me how many stones am I holding, and the prophet said, do you want me to tell you how many you're holding, or do you want the stones tell you themselves? Which in this case, the stone started talking. Rumi keeps on reminding us that everything that we believe are part of the miracle of life. Like, for instance, anything that, the fact that Moses was able to throw his cane onto the ground and it became a snake, or a dragon, or things in that sort. They are all done within, the realm of God's will, and it's done because of what God has been intended for it to do, and everything is in His command. Nothing is outside of His command. Nothing happens without His command being exerted on it. So it is a liberating thought to think that way, because then what we can always look into from the perspective of connection is that all we need to do is to establish or reestablish our connection with the God Almighty. And once we establish or reestablish that connection, then we should be all good. So I want us to contemplate on that. I hope you guys did in the past couple of weeks. We're going to go forward with the story of the old harpist. And, Rumi is about to, again, put us through some, spiritual lessons about that, and all. Any questions so far about this? No questions. That's great. It's a good thing. Sorry, I'm about to light some candles. It's somebody told me it's a good omen to do that, so I'm going to do it. So we'll see if that even helps anything today. All right. So the remainder of the story about the musician, the commander of the faithful Omar conveys to him the message that the unseen voice had uttered. So let's go back to that old musician's tale. With waiting, he became so weak and pale. Omar was then told, free him from his need. He's been our servant in both word and deed. If you remember in the previous story, Omar all of a sudden felt that he had to sleep. And that was something that he had not experienced before. It was strange. It was in the middle of the day, and he tried to fight this sleep, and then he realized that perhaps, what he's being told, or the fact that he needs to sleep, is a message from God. So he's a much valued slave for whom we care. You'll find him in the graveyard, deep in prayer. And you have to understand that the word slave that he is, using is, in terms of us being servants of God. And that's, I just want to make sure that nobody thinks that this is a derogatory term, in a sense that, we're trying to be racist, or, things, of that sort, that these days people are, very much conscious of.
There's really no other way to describe that word bandit other than a slave, so he has no choice in
That's
translation.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So arise, and from the public treasury take 700 dinars rightfully. Tell him, God's chosen you among us all. Take this amount. Forgive me that it's small. So basically, he's given a command that he needs to deliver this money to the harpist in the graveyard. It's for those.
Excuse me. That other word that says "forgive me" is small is pure Persian tarof.
Oh, it is, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And and again, by the way, in the Farsi part, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It's small. It just says, forgive us. That's all. So then he says, tell him God's chosen you among us all. Take this amount, forgive me that is small. It's for those silk harp strings we know you lack. Once it's spent, if you want more, come back. So again, he's done he doesn't know what silk harp strings are. Therefore, what he does is he basically thinks that, the guy needs a string that he needs to actually retune his tools with. But the expression silk harp string is a Farsi expression for tipping a musician. Once it's spent, if you want more, come back. That awesome voice thus shook Omar awake, to then exert him just for God's sake. Towards the graveyard quickly now he ran, clutching his purse and searching for that man. He ran around it for a while, but found, apart from some old codger, none around. So basically, he looked around in the graveyard. There wasn't anyone else, and there was this old guy who had fallen asleep in a grave. This can't be him, he thought, and searched again. He tried and still had not seen other men. He thought, God said, a slave immaculate, a pure man, worthy, blessed, and fortunate. So Omar had a different, image in his mind. And this is an important point because, the fact of the matter is that we tend to think that people who are righteous are a specific look, and we stereotype them in a sense, or we form them into what we believe is their look. And that's not true. I mean, what Rumi is trying to say is that righteousness or spirituality, in a sense, or somebody who is a man of God, doesn't have to look a certain way, because we are not the right judgment. We can't pass that judgment if we feel that because they don't look a certain way, then they're not, connected. And this is again, a very important point here.
Mohsen,
Yes.
this actually happens on a daily life, believe it or not. If you indulge me for a minute, I'll give you an example from personal experience. I was a sales manager at the new home subdivision several years ago. This Vietnamese guy showed up in a beat up car and not dressed really well.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 or 3 sales ladies that were over there never really paid any attention to him. So he just kept going around and around. So I just happened to be there. I stopped and talked to him. Make the story short, he ended up telling me he owned 20 nail salons and he bought 3 homes, $500,000 each cash. And these ladies never even wanted to give him the time of the day because he didn't look the part of being able to buy. So this happens on a daily life.
Right, and that's on the business side of it. But we happen to do the same thing on personal levels.
Yeah.
If somebody is not looking or dressed in a certain way, then we pass judgment. And this is something that I think Rumi is trying to articulate here for us. So again, he thought God said, a slave immaculate, a pure man, worthy, blessed, and fortunate. Can some old harpist be this venerable, mysterious secret? You're incredible. I mean, he's basically just, questioning it. And he's just saying that, in this sense, that the fact that um, uh, the fact that he's saying you're incredible is basically he's praising the secrets or the will of God in a sense. That's what the Farsi part actually is referring to. He went around the graveyard once again, just like a lion prowling around his den. Then he knew there was no other one else in the sight. He thought, in darkness, hearts can still burn bright. So basically, now he realizes that what, in this case, again, this is what he perceives is to be the darkness, is like hearts can still burn bright. He sat down next to him with utmost care. But then he sneezed. The man jumped in the air. And you guys know that, it's been told that Omar had a very, had a very scary, people were scared of him. Let's
He
put it
was
this
tall
way.
and muscular.
Yeah, apparently the guy had some certain charisma with him. So therefore, whoever would see him would kind of get scared a little bit. In this case, he sneezes and the man just wakes up and he jumps. He saw Omar confused. He scratched his head. He felt like leaving, but just shook instead. So he's like, I should get out. Why is he here? God help me, please, the old man prayed inside. It's the police for me, and I cannot hide. So he thought that he had done something wrong, and Omar himself had, come by to basically give him a piece of his mind. Omar glanced at his face, and it was clear the old man was ashamed and pale with fear. He told him, don't be scared. Don't run away. I brought good news from God for you today. God praised your nature so that I, Omar, came to admire and love you from afar. So sit back down beside me and stay near so I can whisper secrets in your ear. God sends his greetings and he asks you this. How are you with your pain that's limitless? This part, both in Farsi and English, is an incredible line. Basically, how beautiful it is that God would ask you how you are. I mean, at the end of the day, how wonderful would it be if God could come and say, hey, How are you? So it's something to think about. God sends his greetings and he asks you this: how are you with your pain that is limitless? Here is cash. First buy your silk harp strings. And again, that's a wrong translation. Basically, the cash is for the tips that you missed out on. And then once you have spent it all, come back again. The old man shook on hearing what was planned. His heart throbbed wildly, and he bit his hand. He screamed, "My peerless Lord, who's free from blame? Please stop, you make this old man burn with shame." Due to abundant pain, he wept in fits, then slammed his harp down, smashing it to bits. So basically, he realizes a few things right about now. First of all, he realizes that what he's been praying and asking for never went into deaf ears. And also, he realizes that now he's totally protected by God. And he realizes the fact that, his needs are taken care of. And in this case, these are needs that up until now he felt he needed in order to survive this life. But what he does is he, bites his hand and now says that I'm burning with shame. Basically, at the mercy of God, I am right now put to shame.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. Well, obviously, Rumi is not trying to portray that, playing Chang is sin or something, is it? Okay.
No, he's not. No, he's not. But you'll know in a few minutes why, he slams his harp
Okay.
and smashes it. So he says, "You veiled me from my Lord, you stupid thing." So in this case, he's saying that because up until now, what he felt was that it was the harp which was taking care of his needs. The more he played the harp, the more he played the harp, the more tips he got, and that's how he was taking care of his needs. And now in this case, he's saying that because you were here, you veiled me from my Lord, you stupid thing, and chased me off the highway to the king. So in this case, chase me off means that you took me away from the path that I could get there by myself. You sucked my blood to make me a disgrace for my whole life before God's perfect grace. You put me in a position, what he's telling is tool, and this is what, all of us have a harp, believe it or not. Harp can be a computer, a harp can be a Rolodex, a harp can be a cell phone, a harp can be a car. It is something that we think our life is totally dependent on it. Harp can be Zoom these days. So what it is that what I think, Rumi is trying to tell us, and he wants us not to forget, is the fact that harp is actually, what we have to break, not literally, but philosophically within ourselves, so that the highway to God is free and clear, so that we can get there. So he's realized, imagine this: you ask for something and it's given. You ask for 700 dinars and it's delivered to you. Now you're like, wait a minute. All this time I was looking at people's hands to give me money. And now money is just not even an object anymore. So that's why he says, you suck my blood to make me a disgrace for my whole life before God's perfect grace. Have mercy, God, supreme in loyalty, upon a life spent in iniquity. So now he feels that his life was a waste. And then he says this, the value of each day God's given you exceeds all things, but no man has a clue. Every day what we're given exceeds everything. I mean, if you want to look at God's gifts to us, is the fact that we get up in the morning, put our 2 feet down. So the value of each day God's given you exceeds all things, but no man has a clue. Throughout my life, I was a waste of space. I spend my days with treble, notes, and bass. Now he's talking about how his days went through, and in this case, uh, I just want to get the right wording here. So basically, what he's saying is that all I worried about, in this case, he's translated it literally to treble and bass, which they are the low intonation and high intonation of a note. Okay, so the Farsi part actually it says this better because there is a low intonation which actually brings you down, and there's the high intonation that actually takes you up. And the low and the high intonation is translated into what we believe the low and the high of life is. So this is what this really should be translated into, that I spend my days with the low and highs of the life's note, of the music of the life. We go through the lows and the highs. And the funny part is that when we're at the highs, we forget about life, or I'm sorry, we forget about God. And when we're at the low, we are all there, 100%, because we want to get out of the low. Immersed forever in my fickle art, and I thus forget the pain of being apart. So in this case, the fickle arts is also not a good translation. So in Farsi or in Iranian music, there are different what they call is instrumentation. So instrumentations, there's 7 different instrumentations of the Farsi classical music. Kind of like you have 7 different notations when it comes down to just classical music itself. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, right? So it's the same thing in there. And what he's saying is that because I was so integrated into all these intonations or all these different instrumentations of the classical music that I was playing, okay, I forgot that I am being so much far away from you, and I'm not realizing you within myself. So it says, I thus forgot the pain of being apart. The freshness in my memory, the freshness in my minor keys instead has shriveled up my heart and left it dead. So what he's saying is that because the minor keys are very difficult to play, whether you play a piano or you play any other instrumentations, the minor keys are very difficult to actually play. So in this case, what he's saying is that the minor keys, sorry, I'm going to mute everyone if it's okay. So the minor keys are the ones that put us, it takes a lot of craftsmanship to actually, play it. And what he's saying is that I just forgot everything else when I was actually busy with the minor keys. And imagine, so it's the major keys and the minor keys. And the funny part in life is that we're always busy with the minor stuff. Due to my hours spent on each melody, the caravan moved on too soon for me. So I was thinking about the melody that I was playing, whereas there was a different melody that was playing and I was completely unaware of it. I never connected with that melody. Against myself, please God, come to my aid. If no one else's complaints have I now made. So he's saying, just come to my rescue. I really don't need any more money. I want to be rescued. I can't receive such help from any source. That means that no one else can rescue me. I can't receive such help from any source, but God, who's closer than myself, of course. So the only person who can help me in this is what is closer to me than me. And in this case, what is closer to us than us is actually God himself. My being comes each breath from him to me. Once this declines, I'll see his unity. So in this case, is like the moment, every, if I get myself aligned with his self, meaning the fact that I could actually get rid of myself and have his self with me, okay? Therefore, I'm able to see him within myself. And in this case, then there's nothing, there's nothing, I shouldn't be ashamed of it, first of all. And the second thing is I get unity. I become one with him. Like when near someone counting out your gold, your whole attention soon this man will hold. In this case, what he's saying is, I don't think if this translation is also right from the, the last line. So, if somebody is about to give you gold, okay, you don't pay attention to yourself. You pay attention to him because you want to make sure he gives you what you're asking for. Okay. That's what this line is. So like when near someone counting out your gold, your whole attention soon this man will hold. So what he's trying to say is that if somebody's counting your gold to give it to you, your attention is not onto you, yourself, that, oh, what am I doing right now? What's going on in my life? Blah, blah, blah. Your attention is to him to make sure that the gold that he's counting is not miscounted and is giving you exactly what you need. So in this case, what he's saying is that you're about to receive gold. So you have to pay attention to the person who's giving you gold, not you. You're not doing anything for yourself. What you're doing for yourself is, basically make everything harder and more troubling for yourself. That is what we're good at. We bring a lot of trouble for ourselves. We make things harder for ourselves. And that's us. Okay. All right. Any questions? So we go to the next story, which Omar turns the old man's gaze from the station of weeping, which requires self-existence, to the station of absorption. Now, sure enough, the guy is weeping, and he weeps for himself because, you remember he says that, my whole life was spent on something that was not even valuable. He's happy that he has found God now, and he's happy that he can get what he needs from God, but he's not happy that he spent his entire life looking elsewhere. And he's weeping now, meaning that, he's crying for himself. So let's see what Omar tells him. Omar then told him, your acute distress points also to your own self-consciousness. So the fact that you are distressed, that means that there is a self that is at distress right now. It's unhappy, it's sad, and you are weeping or you are releasing an emotion because of it. Okay. Annihilation, and I'm still having trouble with this word. Annihilation has a difference, basically, in its meaning. Self-consciousness is there a gross offense. So in this case, what he's referring to as annihilation is the fact that you go into a selfless mode. So when you actually become selfless, that means that there is no self left for you to weep for. That is when you are at a selfless state. You're at the nothingness. And now he's using the word annihilation. Thank you. Thank you, Metin. Yeah. And he's using that for it. So basically is nothingness. So it's like that is a different state. Self-consciousness is there a gross offense. So when we're self-conscious, that means that there is still a self that we're worried about. And Rumi is trying to get us to a position whereas there is no self to worry about. Because we shouldn't be worried about the self. It's thinking of the past to no avail. So the way he's trying to tell us now, how is it that this offense, or in this case, what are we offending here? He's saying you're offending the fact of what is part of your, it's part of your essence. It's what you're made of. You're not discovering that. You're doing everything else about it. So what he's saying is that it's thinking of the past to no avail. From God, the past and future both will veil. So in this case, he's saying that every time you think about the past, as far as what has happened in the past, or what's going to happen in the future, both of these, what he's saying is that it's not anything that you should worry about. Because every time you go to the past and every time you go to the future, you're not present. And present is where God's state is. So at God's state, which is present, is where you need to be at every instance. Now think about how well you can practice this in life. Personally, guilty. I think about the past, I worry about the future. All of us, one way or another, are doing this.
Mohsen?
Yes.
Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is mystery. Today is the gift you have. That's why it's called present.
Kung Fu Panda.
That's right.
I love that cartoon. Yes, it is the present. Now, I'm asking you guys, how can we do this? I really want to start getting practical around this because, so I'm going to give a confession here, which is, again, so somebody recommended a book to me, which is called Reinventing Your Life. Has anybody read that? Okay. No. Interesting book. I'm still reading it, but it has a worksheet associated with it. And here's the questions that the worksheet asks. So they're trying to figure out life traps, which has, and again, I keep forgetting that at some point I have always not agreed with psychologists, and I believe that psychologists' work is shit. So there you go. I said it. All right. Now these are the questions that they want you. So in this case, they have identified 11 life traps, 11 of them that you might be part of. And it's so here's the question. So let me tell you what the life traps are. So life trap, the first one is abandonment. The second one is mistrust and abuse, dependence, vulnerability, emotional deprivation, social exclusion, defectiveness, failure, subjugation, unrelenting standards, and entitlement. Did you get that? Yeah? Okay. Then they try to give you some kind of a scoring system as to where you are in the spectrum of your life traps. What traps are you ingrained with? Okay. So they want you to think about your childhood, and they want you to think about present day. As a child, I find myself clinging to people I'm close to because I'm afraid they'll leave me. So immediately now you have to think through your childhood, that did I actually have a feeling like that, and how severe that was. Perhaps you want to relive it a little bit in your mind and then score yourself. Or as a child, I'm usually on the lookout for people's ulterior motives. I don't trust people easily. So now I have to go back to so think about this. I'm telling you guys, this is really, when we read Rumi poetry, we have to consciously think through it, that what is proper, what is it that we want out of this? This has to free us. Rumi poetry has to free us from all of these strings, from all of these stuff that can completely hook us into this life.
Hard, very hard.
I don't know.
In order to give up everything materially, you really need to go live in a cave somewhere, because it's around you all the time, every time. It's hard.
So this is what we need to do. Seriously. If you want these poems to work, I think we've got to either take it into heart and do it, or I'm sorry, I don't need to just spend Wednesday nights on this. I'm serious, and you guys,
No,
I'm sure
I
you don't
agree.
need it either.
No.
Well, I have to, with all due respect, kind of disagree. I agree if your goal is all or none, but any class helps you to kind of dispossess some of those, belonging, or some of those bad habits. So
You're right, they help, but how much are you willing to do yourself? Again, it's something that you have to do it yourself. It is us, it's me, it's my problem. When I am looking in the past and when I'm worried about the future, it is my problem. When I'm not realizing how beautiful the now is, it is my problem. Seriously, it's my problem. I'm talking about me, myself. if I don't get that, if something can totally frustrate me during the day, which ruins the rest of the day for me, that is my problem. And that means that, again, either I'm not listening to myself, either I'm not brave enough to do what I say I would do. It is so difficult. And I'm saying it because, from bottom of my heart, it's been years that at least, some of us have been studying this. And I'm telling it myself, and I'm like, this has to do something. It has to do something good. And it is something that's good. At the end of the day, when you even think through how life has passed you by and what we've, missed in it, it's all our own responsibility. And in this case, all Rumi is telling us is, hey, why don't you just look at the present? So set fire to those two now, and please take heed. The two is talking about is the past and the future. So it is the most difficult thing. How do I set fire to these two?
You mentioned before, I think people we asked like Rumi's understanding about hell and heaven, all these things. But I'm wondering, just I think I get the idea about present, past, and future. But usually when you there's like this standard Muslim go-to is like you think about life after death. And so, that's still kind of future, right? Usually, that's usually the reminder, right? And you do a lot oftentimes to think about.
The more I think about it, sorry, I interrupted you, Mithine, but the more I think about it, the more I'm realizing that's an easy way out.
Yeah.
I think I am deceiving myself when I come back and say it will eventually be good. I'm really not realizing the now. If I'm saying it will eventually be good, it has to be now.
It's not so much. That's where things get interesting. People talk about this a lot, right? It's sort of like even
of course.
Yeah, like there's the problem of divine justice present in this world. Not the problem, but like divine justice presence in this world is balanced by justice in the next life. Is like fundamental to theodicity in Islam. Right?
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Yeah, that's my question. My question's not super well formed, but it's kind of like in lieu of that, in light of that, how does Rumi understand? Because like we have a timeline, past, present, and future, which I can understand living in the now in sort of like in terms of this life.
Yeah.
But it's like, because I guess there's the timeline of this world, and then there's sort of like dunya akhirah parallel as well.
So let me put it in a different perspective. Think about the story that he's telling us. So it's a story of a man who is at the end of his rope, right? Yeah. And what he has used to do, the trait that he had, is something that he needed a very specific skill that he needed to utilize his body for it. And now it just doesn't get there anymore. He cannot perform as much, right? So he goes, and he is now, as he is feeling the end, he's asking for help.
Yeah.
And for once, rather than wanting things to happen outside of himself, he goes and he tries to do what he knows best without any expectation of others.
Mhm.
And he just decides that this is like something that I'll do for God in this case. And by the way, when he does that, he has no idea what he's doing. Basically, again, being at the end of his rope is exactly where he's at. He's at the end of his rope.
Yeah.
Again, Rumi is then trying to tell us, again, this is a story. He allows himself to put stories in these states. He's telling us that, the guy goes into a dream. He sees things. He experiences these things. He comes back. Meanwhile, the guy gets Omar gets a revelation that, hey, you need to go to the graveyard and you have to find this person and all that.
Yeah.
What he's trying to tell us is I think beyond this story, and the story is this, at least from my understanding. If you do things as you know best with your purest intention, it is going to be rewarded, and it will reward you beyond what you need. So it takes care of your needs, it takes care of your fears,
Mhm.
and it tells you, be happy.
Mhm.
I mean, it's interesting that the fact that we're always contemplating whether we're sad or we're happy, and the sadness is something that to us is something that actually is basically ruining our entire day, or ruining our entire life, or sometimes some people just can't even comply with it anymore. So what they do is they just kind of let go of everything, including their own life. He just says that you never know from today until next day what's going to happen. You just don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess I don't. There's not necessarily, because like even this story you can understand in the lens of like remembrance of the like dunya versus akhirah kind of stuff, because like that's basically what the harpist did. Was he went to the graveyard in the most like explicit way. He went to the graveyard and remembered death, and then that's when the sincerity came, and then so yeah, I guess there's not really a contradiction there.
So then what does that tell you? I mean, if this is how, let's just say for sake of argument, this is what we're going to get rewarded, how we're going to get rewarded, does it really make a difference whether it's dunya or akhirah? Does it really make a difference whether it's this life or next?
Yeah, I mean that part is, I think, the real the lesson from a lot of these stories, where it's kind of like and even it ties into, I mean, we haven't come to it, but you mentioned it before about Rumi's position on heaven and hell, and even Rabia, the mystic there with the bucket and the bucket of fire and the bucket of water, one to extinguish heaven, hell, one to burn paradise for people who are not seeking the connection.
Right.
So that, I guess, in that sense of reward, it's like not yeah, I mean that you're not necessarily looking for the reward. I mean, the reward comes from God. Yeah, it comes from God. The when and the where is immaterial.
Yeah. I think like you said, if we open our eyes, and in this case that it's the divine eyesight that we're looking at, or something that we can see beyond what is given to us. Because again, I have to say, I've been reading these books in the past couple of days and so forth. One of the things that they keep saying is that, oh, you're not remembering everything that has been happening to you that's good. You have to write everything that's good about yourself and put it on top of your bed, or put it on your fridge or something like that. And then I'm thinking, like, this is all basically everything that these poetries have been saying. That look around you, I see, and Rumi says this. Rumi says, I see God around me. Everything that I see God in it. And that is basically the way we should look at everything, but we don't. Unfortunately, we don't. We get too consumed by the details and we get trapped in this past and the future. It is a trapment. I think somebody should write a book rather than 11 trapments of your life about this trapment. This is what's trapping us. The past and the future. So, yeah, anyhow. So from God, the past and the future both will veil. So set fire. Oh, that's so strong when he says this. Set fire to those two now, and please take heed. So so in this case, the part is, this should be read, I think, not heed. And the second part, I mean, it does justice, but basically what he's trying to now say is that you've got these knots, and I think in the next verse he actually kind of corrects it. So he says, don't stay blocked up with knots like a bad reed. Set fire to, set fire to those two now, and take heed. Don't stay blocked up with knots like a bad reed. So basically we create these knots inside ourselves, and the more knots we have, the less we can sing, or the less that we can actually, basically bring out the heavenly tunes. While it's blocked up, it can be intimate. No lips counted as an associate. So if it's blocked up, you cannot be intimate. Why is it that it can't be intimate? Because it's not pretty anymore. It's not something that people would accept. It just doesn't do what it's supposed to do. While walking, all your thoughts are wandering in a sense. Back home about yourself, you're pondering. And it's interesting. You're constantly thinking. That's what he's trying to say. You have knowledge, but you're heedless of its source. It's worse than sin. You're kind of blind remorse. I think this is what we've been talking about. You have knowledge, you know a lot, right? And you have knowledge, but you're heedless of its source. So you don't know who's the one who's giving you this knowledge. You just think you're acquiring it, but somebody's giving them to you. It's worse than sin. You're kind of blind remorse. So what he's saying is that, you can't even have remorse, because your remorse is worse than worse than a sin. Why still repent? Why still repent about a state that's past? Repent of your repentance now at last. So he keeps on now saying that, hey, be in the now. It's very interesting that he says this here, because if you remember, one of the things that he kept telling us is the fact that repent. And repentance, as he's been telling us, is that change your way so that you would actually be better. Now what in this part, what he's saying is that you keep repenting about what has happened in the past. Okay. And again, it is a constant thing. And what he's saying is that change your way, stop repenting, do something different. Repent from the fact that you're repenting so much. Because that means that you haven't changed anything about yourself. You keep doing what you're doing and you keep repenting. You thought then just of music in your ears. Now you prefer to weep your salty tears. Now, again, this is what Omar is telling him. Omar, discerning mirrors of God's light, woke up the old man's soul from its dark night. So what he said is that, listen, this is the present. Be in the present. Let the past go. Let it just go. You have to let it go. He stopped his weeping and his laughing too. His old soul died, but he was born anew. So now he's not laughing and he's not crying either. And remember, Rumi keeps telling us that when you were able to laugh or cry without your lips and your eyes, then that's exactly when you are connected. He tells us that he gets to cry, or I'm sorry, he says that I get to laugh without lips, without having lips. So this is how your soul laughs. Your soul doesn't have lips, but it can be laughing. You taught then just of music in your ears, now you prefer to weep your salty tears. Omar, discerning mirrors of God's light, woke up the old man's soul of its dark night. He stopped his weeping and his laughing too. The old soul died, but he was born anew. Then he was filled with such bewilderment. He rose beyond the earth and firmament. So now, in this case, he basically came into an amusement state. He was amused and at awe. He went because he was able to go beyond what was holding him back. A search beyond all searches thus begun. Not that I understand, perhaps you can. So in this case, he's like, he started, looking, he started searching beyond what anyone else would be searching at. And in this part, this is a bad translation. He's like, I can't explain it. If you can explain it, please go ahead. And what he's saying is that everyone's experience is different. Once they get into this state, that they are free from anything that bounds them to this past and the present game. Once they're freed out of it, their experience is just completely unspoken. I mean, you cannot speak of it. You can't describe it. Such state that words beyond what's known to us, drowned in the beauty of the glorious. So he goes into the, basically just getting all drowned into the glorious is referring to God. It basically becomes drowned into the beauty of God. A drowning neither meaning his deliverance, nor that the sea, and he still show a difference. So he's like, it's not like, he didn't drown like, it's not drowning that the way we know it, that, somebody knew that somebody else just went and drowned and he disappeared or something like that. It's something beyond what we can even comprehend. Your intellect can know the whole unless you keep on pleading and show neediness. It's like, unless you want it, you can't know everything. Your intellect don't get it. It cannot understand it. Your intellect can't know the whole unless you keep on pleading and show neediness. When such demands are made repeatedly, at last a wave will come from the pure sea. So you have to keep on asking and keep on wanting it until finally the pure sea will answer you. It will answer you with waves. All right. So he says, now that we have reached the end of this tale, the old man and his state have drawn the veil. He's shaken words of just like crumbs of bread, though half of this long tale is left unsaid. For such delights to gamble is the cost. 100,000 souls may thus be lost. I love this one. So he's saying that in case you wonder, you know, if you want to understand this delight, and this delight is a spiritual delight that he's talking about, you have to give everything. To gamble is the cost. Gambling is you give and you don't know whether you're going to get it or not. 100,000 souls may thus be lost. So you may not get it at the first instance. You may have to sacrifice over and over and over again. Be like a hunting falcon in your soul. Risk your life like the sun. Let the dice roll. So in this case, what he's saying, it's not the dice roll. That probably wouldn't be the right translation as well. So it's like, give life like the sun gives life without asking for anything. Risk your life like the sun. Just give it. And it's basically just prepare to give it all. The sun which radiates life to all men, each moment empties, then fills up again. And it's interesting that, you know, Rumi back then somehow knew how the sun works. You know that there are series of explosions that keeps on happening on the surface of the sun. And he's saying in here that each moment it empties, then fills up again. Because of these explosions, there is an emptiness. I mean, once something explodes, it's an emptiness. And then again, another one surfaces up, and that one explodes. Another one. It is so amazing that he has been saying this, which is like, makes me wonder how he knew it. Sun of reality, diffuse life too. So in this case, you can, now you're looking at the sun out there, you look at sun of your life and give out life. Make this old world shine bright as though it's new. Spirit and life arrive here from beyond, like water pouring nonstop in a pond. So he's basically saying that, hey, he's telling us that this is never ending. Although we think it's ending, we think this is it. There's no other way. Everybody has taken all the money. All the real estate is gone. Everyone else, you know, we're just left out of the entire game. That's how we're thinking on a daily basis. Everyone else has taken all of it. And the funny part is that because we are in the past and the present, I'm sorry, the past and the future, we're not in the present. The present is this: spirit and life arrive here from beyond, like water pouring nonstop in a pond. It's just pouring nonstop from somewhere else. Any questions? Any comments?
Just very good stuff tonight. I like it.
Very good stuff, but we need to practice. We need to practice. I mean, I'm telling myself, I mean, I'm glad this is how miserable sometimes some people's lives are. And I'm like, you become so dependent on things that, again, is completely out of your control. And what you have control over is you. To know that there is a present, and this present is beautiful. Okay, so next part. So all of the story of the harpist and how he, was awarded, dinars by Omar, and how, and the part that, he realized about him is that, by the way, Rumi tells us to weep. And the reason he tells us to weep is because it helps our heart to kind of, get in touch with our soul. It connects them, and it allows you to connect to your inner essence. But he's saying that there's a time that you need to even let go of weeping, because the soul neither laughs nor weeps, but it's always happy. And it's always laughing. Of course, it's up to us to make it happen. So the next part is interesting as well. It says, commentary on the prayer of those two angels who call out at every market each day, God give every spender change to spare and bring every miser harm, with the explanation that the spender refers to the aspirant on the path to God, not the one who squanders it for the sake of desire. Let's see what it says. So the prophet said, two angels always shout with voices that sound sweet, then they cry out. Please, God, keep all the spenders satisfied. Let them go home with their wealth multiplied. But don't give the misers anything, please, Lord, but loss of income, so they'll lose their hoard.
Wow, that's cruel.
That is cruel. Yeah. Why is that? Why is it that Rumi is bringing this here? What does a miser do? What's a spender and a miser? Do you guys know exactly what those, again, it's somebody stingy. Miser is the guy who's stingy. Spender is, of course, somebody who spends money. And we all know that being a spender doesn't mean that the guy has a lot of money. He's just able to spend. It's an ability. So
I like Dr. Namazi Khan's statement. He said, have you ever seen anybody who is very generous to be poor?
Well, again, generosity is also, the definition of generosity is not a definition that, we think that in order to be generous, we have to have it. But you need to just be generous. Generosity is an act of, it's an act of God. It is an act of God, because Jude is one of the words that refers to God, and a characteristic of God, it's himself. And, the fact that God is able to give and he's a giver, that basically reaffirms that. So the two angels keep on praying every day that the spenders, God keep them all the spenders satisfied. Let them go home with their wealth multiplied, but don't give misers anything, please, Lord, but loss of income, so they'll lose their hoard. Yet, stinginess excels a generous hand. Don't give what God's expect at his command. So, again, this is part of what these two, angels apparently are saying, is that I'm sorry. So, so when he says, "Yet stinginess excels a generous hand," don't give what's God's except at his command. So what he's saying is that generosity and stinginess sometimes, if you're not about to do anything that is, advancing a God's will or advancing your connection with God, don't be stingy about it. But if it's something that's about to advance your connection with God or advancing the God's will, then keep on giving. Okay. Then in return, you'll gain a boundless treasure and not an unbeliever's paltry measure. So what you get in return when you give in the path that would get you closer to your source and your God, then you would in return be rewarded on it as well. Seek God's command from those in Union C. Not every heart has this capacity. So it's saying that look at look at what God is asking you to do and what to give in his way, and you will be part of this union C. The union in this case is the C that actually connects you with God. In the Quran, those who choose to forget found all their spending only buyer's regret. The Meccans who revealed the Prophet tried a sacrifice to draw God to their side. So now he's talking about spending in the path that is against what the path of God is. And he's given us an example that we know that, for instance, when the first war that Prophet had, the Badr war, the people of Mecca would sacrifice what do you call it, camels, in order to actually win the war. So in this case, their sacrifice was not, again, these are spendings that is not a good spent. Such camel sacrifice thus they made to sharpen on his neck a murderous blade, but they were like that over generous slave, the king's wealth to his enemies he gave. Now in this case, they are the same as people like this slave. And there's a story of a slave who would steal from the king in order to get, basically Robin Hood, And Rumi is saying that is also not right, being Robin Hood. But they were like that. So to the king, this kind of generous act warranted exile. This slave was attacked. That's why believers fearfully recite, "Show us the straight path" in their prayers each night. So what do we say every night when we pray? We say, "Ehdena sirat al-mustaqim," show us the straight path. It's like there are times that when it comes down to spending, you're not quite sure whether you're spending in the right path or whether you're advancing some other cause that you shouldn't be advancing. Okay. So the generous gives coins to all those who ask, but offering up one's souls, the lover's task. Now, this is also an interesting one. He's saying that, when you're, generous people, they give to the people who ask them for money. They just give. And in this case, what they're giving is something that they have acquired. And to begin with, it wasn't any time, it wasn't theirs to begin with anyways. But offering up one's souls, so the difference between the lover and the people who are just transactionally generous is the fact that the lover asks for your soul. You have to give up your soul. Give bread for God's sake, more will come to you. Give up your soul, receive a soul that's new. So he's saying that there is a formula around this. So when you give for God's sake, you give bread, more bread comes towards you. You get more money back, you get more wealth back. Give up your soul and you receive a new soul. Now, what does it mean to have a new soul? What does it mean? What does it mean that I actually can get a new soul?
Connected soul.
It says new. It doesn't say connected.
Is that what the Christians call reborn?
Okay. And what does that mean when you're a reborn Christian?
That means you didn't believe and now you are a believer of some sort.
Okay, be a little kinder to that statement.
You're in different world. You see things that you didn't see before.
Okay. Yeah.
Bigger world, not limited world.
All right. Good. So basically, actually, yeah, Rasul's example is actually, so born again. So if you're born again in any certain, so we call it clean slate. We call it about born again. When you're born again, everything is new. Everything about you is new. Everything that might come to you is always a fresh experience. By the way, when you're born again, you're letting go of your past. Everything is about the, now. Hopefully, and the future is something that you're not going to look forward to. It's just exactly what's happening at the moment. So give bread for God's sake, more will come to you. Give up your soul, receive a soul that's new. When leaves fall off the tree, then God will give the leafless tree what it should need to live. So it's like, think about how a tree lets go of all its leaves and goes through the winter. And then God gives him back what he needs to live. Your being generous won't leave you without. God's grace won't leave you ruined. Never doubt. So again, it's saying that if you're giving and you're giving for the sake of God, or you're giving up your soul to the sake of connection, God's grace won't leave you ruined. Never doubt. This is important. He would never let go of you. Your barn is emptied when you sow what's there, but soon your field sprouts goodness everywhere. So it's like every time you actually want to farm, you take from the barn, you empty the barn, you spread it across the earth, and you wait. So you have to give it. You have to give it up. Your barn is emptied when you sow what's there, but soon your field sprouts goodness everywhere. What you save in your barn is as capital, gets eaten up by mice. It's temporal. So you can either give it up on your field and expect it to actually multiply, or you can leave it there and the mice will come and take it away for you. You get a lawsuit, that's a mice. You get your, identity stolen, that's a mice. Give it up. It will come.
Actually, giving is exactly like pruning your trees or your bushes.
Exactly.
That the more you prune, the more growth, more room for new growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what you're saving your barn as capital gets eaten up by mice. It's temporal. This world is not. Look for lasting whole. So what he's saying is this world is not what you think it is. Your body is void. Try searching in your soul. So bring your bitter soul now to the sword. A soul just like the sea is the reward. So basically he's saying that bring your soul and be willing to give it up. So bring your bitter soul now to the sword. A soul just like the sea is the reward. Now, it just, you would get a new one. You would get a refreshed one. You would get a one that is not as distorted by your experiences. If you don't know how to find this location, just listen to the following narration. All right. Now let's listen to the following narration and find out. So the story is of the Khalifa who surpassed Hatem Ta'i in generosity for his own time and was peerless then. So this is a long story. Yes, it is a long story that we're gonna read. It's about to start. He's now telling us about a Khalifa or a king at the time of telling the story, and a couple who are poor. And this Khalifa is just a generous king. So there was a Khalifa once in history who seemed superior to Hatem Ta'i. Hatem Ta'i is a character which in most Farsi stories was famous for generosity. He would just give. He was a very wealthy man, and he would just generously give. The flag of generosity he had raised, eradicating need through his kind ways. His generous deeds produced pearls in the sea and stretched around the world repeatedly. He was like clouds or rainfall for dry land, thus representing God's own giving hand. His gifts made deepest minds and oceans quake. The route to him all caravans would take. The needy turned towards his doors in prayer. News of his generous ways spread everywhere. Persian, Greeks, Arabs, Turks, with eyebrows raised by his munificence, were left amazed. Water of life and sea of kindness too. Through him, all humans were soon born anew. I think that just explains how generous this king was. Okay. Now he gets into a story of this couple. So it's a story about a poor Bedouin and his wife, altercation with him because of their want and poverty. So there's a couple, they're not too rich, they're actually poor, and you know, the wife is unhappy. Yeah. Well, they say no money, no honey. And in this case, he's about to experience that. So a Bedouin lived with his weary bride. Since they were hard up, every day she cried. And this is what she would say: we always have to suffer and be poor. The rest rejoice while you and I endure. We have no bread, just jealousy and pain. We have no water. Tears replace the rain. Just sunlight closes us in the afternoon. At night, our sheets are beams stoned by the moon, shone by the moon. Imagining the moon's a wholesome pie, we lift our hands to grab it from the sky. Paupers, ashamed at our sad poverty, just watch us starve, filled with anxiety. Our kin as well as strangers keep away, like Samari when not allowed to stay. So Samari in this case, so he's referring to Samari is the, when Moses went to the Sinai, there's somebody named Samari. He actually made a cow out of gold, and he's and that story. This is what he's referring to, and it's saying that when Moses comes back, he actually makes Samari to actually go away, and he couldn't stay with everyone else. It's saying like we have become like Samari, that we cannot stick around with people. People don't like us anymore. If I ask for some beans to fill my cup, they shout, "May you die painfully, shut up." War and charity is Arab pride. Among them, you're a blemish that must hide. Fighting, we don't need what to have no life. Beheaded thus by poverty's cruel knife. Charity, we must beg for our food first. We suck the blood of flies to slake our thirst. And if a guest should ever come our way while he's asleep, I'll take his coat away. That's the wife telling the husband, not too happy. Actually, she's very unhappy. Okay. So now, Rumi tells us a couple other tales before he continues the story, which this is the first one. It says, the deception of needy disciplines by the false claimants whom they imagine to be venerable authorities who are in union with God, not knowing the difference between fact and fiction, between what grows naturally and what has been grafted. So he's saying that some people believe that they are connected, but they're really not connected. It's just something that they deceive others to think through. Let's see what they say. Because of this, the wise have understood one must become the guest of someone good. You're the disciple of a person who through meanness will steal all your gains from you. So in this case, it's saying that you want stuff, you want things. But the problem is that the person that you want it from is the person that who keeps telling you that I will bring it to you tomorrow. He would never give it to you today. Through meanness will steal all your gains from you. How can he help you when he has no power? He gives no light. You're darkened by the hour. So in this case, you are not connected with him, first of all. The second thing is that you're constantly being deceived by him because he never delivers on anything that you're asking. You want things from him, but he's never delivering to you. Since he has no light, how can people say by seeing him they'll gain a single ray? So in this case, this person is so consumed with himself that no one else can actually get any ray of light from him. There's no way that he can actually give any sort of relief to anyone. Just like a half-blind doctor treating eyes. He pulls wool over them. This man just lies. So it's like when you put wool over eyes, not all eyes need that. Sometimes, in the past, when eyes were like, not seeing well, they would like put some stuff over it. And part of it was a specific, wool. And Rumi is saying that not all eyes need to be treated that way. In poverty and wealth, we are this way. May no guess by us to be led stray. Now, in this case, he just basically went right back to the story of the woman and the man, because the woman starts
husband and wife.
Yeah, the husband and the wife. If you have not seen a famine's face before, look at us Bedouins now at your door. Each false guide hides our feature inwardly. His heart is dark though he talks cleverly. So now in this case, what he's basically trying to say is that we want stuff, but the problem is that we can never get it. Why? Because the person who keeps on telling us that he's about to give us anything, or he can award us something, or give us some sort of a relief, his heart is dark. He is not even familiar with the light that he's speaking of. However, he's got a tongue and a language that it actually kind of speaks of a light that basically doesn't even exist. If you're not, so each false guide hides our features inwardly. His heart is dark, though he talks cleverly. Of God, he doesn't have a single trace, but claims more grace than Adam to your face. The devil won't show him a single hair. I'm greater than the saints, he'll still declare. So we have to be careful about these people. These people all around us, they promise you the world and they deliver nothing. He's saying that the devil even won't show him a day. The devil won't even, give him any sort of a, what do they say? He won't give him a time of day. He's stolen terms from Sufis for his speech. So this guy is so clever that he has stolen words from Sufis that now he's using that in his speech. So men might think he's qualified to teach. So everyone else, when they listen to him, they're like, oh my God, this guy, talks with such an elegant, vocabulary. To Bayazid, he even deals out blame. His inner being makes Yazid feel shame. So Bayazid is a character, or is a person actually, who was before Rumi, and he was a very spiritual man. He basically was, was convicted because he claimed that he was God. And Rumi actually tells us in a story, in chapter in book 3, as far as what did really Bayazid say. Bayazid didn't say that he was God, meaning that he is God himself. Rumi tells us that he actually, when he is emptied out of himself, he's filled with God. Therefore, when he says that, he's not saying a bad word, or he's not claiming to be God. He's just saying that I have no self anymore in me. The second Yazid is the Yazid which was the son of Muawiyah, and the son of Imam Ali Hussein was killed by his his people. And in this case, Rumi is referring to him, to Yazid. So he's saying that to Bayazid, he even deals out blame. So this person who has memorized Sufi's words, he actually surpasses Bayazid in what he says. His inner being, however, makes Yazid feel shame. So Yazid was not a good person. They're saying that this guy's inner being is even worse than Yazid. Without a crumb from heaven, he's alone. God hasn't even thrown to him a bone. He said, I've spread a feast. Come, everyone, for I'm God's deputy, the Khalifa's son. This statement is what politicians say. Why don't you guys all come along? I've got a spread for you here. I've got a feast. Hey, simple-hearted people everywhere, come fill your stomach here with my hot air. Some waited years for promises he made. Tomorrow never came, and dreams must fade. It takes a while until one's inner soul becomes revealed to others as a whole. Is there some gold beneath the body's wall, or just a snake pit where foul insects crawl? Once it is known that this man was depraved, his students will be too old to be saved. All right. Any comments or questions about this one?
I guess we have to. It happens a lot in like the fallings of celebrity religious figures in our community.
Exactly.
Pretty big impact.
Constantly. Now, Rumi tried to be a little balanced there. He says, in explanation of how it happens occasionally that a disciple sincerely believes that a false claimant is authentic, and through this conviction of his reaches a station that his sheikh has never ever even dreamt of, such that fire and water cannot harm him, though they do harm his sheikh. But this is very rare. So occasionally we see the opposite. From falsehood, some disciples benefit. With a sincere aim, they may reach their goal, though a mere body they had thought a soul. Guessing the Qibla in the dead of night, God heard their prayers, though they did not guess right. So in this case, he's saying that their intention was right, and that actually meant something. This vain impostor lack a soul within, just as we both lack food and are so thin. Why should we hide our want like this big fake, and merely for our reputation's sake? So basically what he's now telling us is that this happens, and once it happens, It is a good for the person, and it's because of that person's you know pure intention. That's why he or she was guided the right way and was able to actually get through this properly and exceeds the sheikh himself. All right, I'm going to stop here.
Thank you very much.
Any comments, any questions?
Mohsen, you mentioned Bayezid. Is it the person who claimed Ana al-Haq and was burnt on stake?
Yeah, it's
That's
him.
him.
And also there's another one named
Halaj.
Mansur Hallaj. There you go, Hallaj. Yeah.
That's the
So
one.
these guys, yeah, were the ones who actually claimed Ana al-Haq. You're right. And in this case, Rumi defends them and says that the Ana al-Haq that they said was not because they claimed godness. They were in themselves. They were completely empty of self.
Yeah.
It's like a vacuum which is empty. When you actually let it go, it fills up with the next immediate thing, which is the soul. That's
You know how, so I grew up in Pakistan, as you know, and this whole mysticism is a business over there.
same thing in
Funny
Iran.
story. One of my MBA classmates, when I met him like 20 years later, he looks like, long beard and, cap and gown and everything. And I'm like, dude, what's up? And he's like, I'm a mystic. I'm like, what happened to MBA? And he said this. He's like, it's all the same thing.
How about that?
Like it's business, right?
No,
But
I
funny,
want to say
that
this.
funny story aside, so I have seen people growing up in Pakistan who claim to be these enlightened mystics, and he would make statements like, not only an al-Haq, not only I'm the voice of God, I am God. And look how Mansur Halaj said that, how the other person that you mentioned, he said that, I am following their footsteps. So whatever I say goes. And in one case that I know firsthand, God forgive me for even sharing this. So they have these places like their shrines, I guess. And if someone doesn't have a baby, the mystic says, well, the lady has to stay at this shrine overnight, and inshallah they'll have a baby. Well, now, and the ladies later have, some of them have babies. Now join the dots. And the last part of this story is that some of those quote unquote mystics, they are my father's patients. My father is a doctor.
Right.
They come to my father for Western medicine and all that. And they are the ones who are charging people money to heal them through spiritual means and through the shenanigans that I just shared with you around babies and whatnot. It's a freaking business over there.
Sonny, it's not just over there. It's here too. It's in Iran the same way. Unfortunately, listen, this is what happens. I mean, people's vulnerabilities are serious. People feel vulnerable. People feel desperate. And these people, these thugs, they take advantage of that. And they take advantage of that vulnerability. And unfortunately, and unfortunately, people fall for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I assure you, even at Rumi's time, this was also happening. This is why he keeps talking about people.
Yeah, he's talking about those kind of people.
Yeah, he's talking about them because he's seen it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our life is now full of it. There's so much of these again, the thieves and thugs that, again, people are I don't know what to say about it. I really don't know what to say about it. is like
It wasn't that long ago that here they would show these ministers on TV healing the crippled and they're banging them on their head and say, "You're healed."
Hmm.
Oh,
I
man.
mean,
It was just 10, 15 years ago on TV here.
No, wasn't there last year during Corona? There was this guy on TV. He was like, I denounce you and I kick you out and this, and he
That's
was like,
him. That's
doing
him.
all,
That's the same guy.
yeah.
I
Oh,
blow on you, the wind of God.
yeah.
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
him.
you know what it is. Again, it is unfortunate. It's so unfortunate, but people do fall for it. And again,
yeah?
this is because people are vulnerable.
Yeah.
When you are feeling sad, when you feel down, when you feel abandoned, when you feel unloved, you are vulnerable. And that vulnerability takes its toll on you if you are, because at that state, people are willing to do a lot of things in order to heal. And you've got somebody who knows how to say the right words, and those words just penetrates through somebody's soul. And that person, falls for it.
It may be vulnerability, but also really not having a solid foundation is really the root cause of it.
Right. But again, you're correct. I mean, a lack of education, lack of knowledge, lack of the will to, go and learn these things. That's all part of it. But I'm talking merely about people who are taking advantage of this situation.
Yeah.
And that's the part that is, unfortunately, it brings us to all of this, in the crazy world that we're in right now.
Mhm.
And by the way, there is a positive term in our vocabulary for creating this facade. It's branding. You create a brand for yourself and you go in that character and you stick to that brand when you post something online, the way you behave, the way you act, the way you speak. Go on LinkedIn, go on Facebook, TikTok, you'll see, lots of those people. And some of them actually put thought leader or influence maker, or trend maker rather, or influencer. They put it in their introduction. Like, how could you call yourself thought leader or influencer or trendsetter? Isn't it for other people to call you? Right? And I've seen people
You're talking about Instagram, right? I mean, the guy
Instagram, LinkedIn, all social media.
Yeah, he calls himself a motivational speaker. Oh boy.
So it's a brand. You can create it, and it's totally justifiable that you can say those fancy words to influence.
Yeah, it is. It is correct. Yeah, those fancy words would sell for sure. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Thanks,
Thank you.
See you inshallah next week.
Yes, sir.
Have a good evening.